Good afternoon, committee. This is the Accounts, Audits and Governance Committee meeting of the 24th November. Just go through the bits you'd expect. Fire evacuation procedures. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this afternoon, therefore if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exit is located at the rear and side of this room. Go down the stairs and meet at the War Memorial Park. Please note this meeting is being webcast live on the internet. Yep. And please can all members switch their phones to silent or turn them off. Thank you very much. One note before we start the agenda, there is a plan at the end of this meeting for a workshop seminar on Treasury Management, and I believe that Councillor Keating and Councillor Parker may be difficult to attend. Councillor Sherlock and Councillor Leake, do you want that this afternoon, or would you? I can't see much point. It is running empty, to be honest. So it is running empty. There's only going to be 2 or 3 of us at this stage. So probably know as much about Treasury as everyone else. Yeah. So shall we postpone that for this afternoon? Okay. Fine. So we try and reschedule it. We can reschedule it at members' better time. Okay. So apologies for absence, Councillors Marks and Councillor Pearce. Agenda items, are there any declarations of interest? None. Item 3, urgent matters, to consider any items. Are there any urgent items that anybody wants to bring to the committee? Okay, item 4, minutes of the committee meeting on the 22nd of September, paper A. Councillor Leake.
Chairman, I've already advised Kevin, I did some time ago, that the statement on page 5 of 52 that I am the representative of Basingstoke and Dean on the Hampshire Pension Fund is incorrect. I don't represent Basingstoke and Dean. I represent all of the districts within the Hampshire and Isle of Wight local authority area, together with one other, namely Mr. Peter Giddings of Test Valley.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask help from those here today that were at the last meeting, and I believe that's yourself and Councillor Sherlock and myself. On page 6, were you? Sorry, I do beg your pardon. On page 6, the reference to the Audit and Accounts Ethical Principles Councillor panel, I believe we agreed the revised membership, because there was a previous member no longer is a member of this committee. Or if I'm dreaming and we didn't do it then, could we now do it at some time in this agenda, please?
Yeah. Yes, we will. Yeah, we'll check it out for you.
Don't we have to replace Andrew Hunter as well as the sort of officer in charge of it?
Membership of the committee, first of all. Councillor Parker.
Again, I actually did think that we had agreed Councillor Pearce, Councillor Donald Sherlock and myself, I thought is what we had agreed. But it's not minuted. Okay. And as Councillor Sherlock kindly reminds me, we do need to request a support officer because of Andrew Hunter's no left.
So we'll amend the minutes accordingly for these minutes, and we'll make that request to the officers.
Yes, we're working on that at the moment to get a lead officer.
Any other items from the minutes of the last meeting? Okay, item 5, use of regulation investigatory powers, which is the committee has requested to note that since the last meeting of the Audit, Governance and Accounts Committee, there have been no requests or authorisations granted for the following: directed surveillance and covert human intelligence source. Okay. So moving on, item 6, Pricewater. Yep.
I would ask for an assurance from officers that phraseology that we're currently using does encompass all the potential surveillance or potential surveillance that may arise over time from this borough council. Could I have that assurance that the phraseology that we're using does totally encompass the potential issues? Thank you.
I think all I can say is it covers all of the it covers all of the potential under the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000. So I'm not aware that there's anything else, but all I can really confirm is that it covers what it says, that it covers the use of the Regulatory Investigatory Powers Act 2000. So I'm not aware of anything else. I don't know if nobody else. So I can go away and circulate something just to confirm that point. But as I say, all I can really say is what it says on the agenda, that under that act there have been none.
I obviously accept the assurance given in relation to the specifics that's quoted. I have no question of doubt about accepting that assurance. I just wanted to be reassured that I am not missing something because it's not referred to. So the suggestion from the head of resources that he would come back with a full assurance is very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. From my understanding, sorry I missed the first part of the question. From my understanding, Basingstoke and Dean haven't used RIPA or made an application for RIPA this year and haven't done so for the last couple of years. So we haven't used it.
I understand. I accept that.
So.
Okay, so let's move on to item 6, PricewaterhouseCoopers annual audit letter. Dan is going to take that on.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is under our requirements in the audit code, we have to supply to you an audit letter each year summarising the work that we've been doing over the previous 12 months. There's no information in this report that you haven't seen before, apart from a couple of points that I will draw your attention to. So just going through the reports, on page 11 of 52, it's got the introduction there. We list out the 3 reports that we've provided to you this year. The first one of those was our audit opinion, which was signed following the previous audit committee meeting. We also provided you with the what we call our ISA 260 reports, the reports charged to those with governance, and our annual certification reports, which was for 2012-13, because the 2013-14 work has yet to be completed. So over the next few pages, we talk about the different key areas we've looked at. As you'll have been able to see, we have no significant issues to report. Everything that we needed to sign, we did sign. We signed it on time without any significant issues to report. If we turn to page 13 of 52, you'll see there the audit findings. These are, again, exactly what was reported in the ISA 260 reports that we reported at the previous meeting. On page 14, there's the first section where there's something new for you to be aware of. That's within the section on the annual governance statements. And all we've done there, if you see at the bottom of the first paragraph, we've said that we found the governance arrangements at the authority are not consistent with the SIP for Solace guidance, because the section 151 officer is not an executive director or member of SLT, However, this is disclosed in the annual governance statement with stating compensating arrangements. We have to say that within here, we have to report that that's the situation, but from an audit perspective, that's okay because you've explained within your annual governance statement what the alternative arrangements are. At the bottom of that second paragraph, we've got about our certification of claims and returns. As I said, so far we've only released our 2012-13 report. That's because the deadline for signing off on the certification work is actually the 30th of November. So you will be receiving the report for 2013-14 in February. The work itself is likely to be signed off at the end of this week, so in time for the deadline. Moving on to page 15, we have got there the matters we had to report to you. Again, the first of those was included within the ISA 260 reports that you noted in the previous meeting. Well, on the next page, page 16, again, is something we haven't reported to you so far this year. That is our follow-up on the points that have been raised in the previous year. So the one point we raised in 2012-13 was to do with related parties. Our work this year didn't find those similar issues, so we're happy that the action was completed. And then finally, on page 17, we've got an update of where we are on the fees. Again, there's still some discussion going on there as a result of the certification work that we're completing. So that's all I had to say on that report. I'm happy to take questions. The key thing to bear in mind is this is a summary report, so the majority of it you have been through before, but please let me know if you have got any queries.
Any questions at all? Councillor Leake.
So it's probably because I have only just rejoined this committee and this may have been asked last time, but on page 11 of 52, on the table on the right-hand side, the second one, we confirmed to the National Audit Office that the council was below the required threshold. What does that mean? Does it mean we have failed to comply, or is being below a good thing or a bad thing? And what? Well, if it's a good thing, then the word required shouldn't be there, and if it's a bad thing, maybe it should be there, but I just like clarification.
I can easily clarify that. The required threshold is relating to the point at which the requirement to undertake specific work had to be done. So the National Audit Office gives us a specific amounts, values in the accounts, at which point work has to be done. Basingstoke hasn't got enough assets or liabilities, income or expenditure, for us to be required to do the full procedures in place. So I agree the wording's not quite as clear as it could be. It's a good thing in the sense that we didn't have to do any extra work, but we confirmed to the National Audit Office that there was nothing that we needed to report to them in relation to that work.
We haven't got enough assets or liabilities, God help. I mean, what's the... what does click in to...
Any other questions at all? We're required to basically receive, okay, as required. Councillor Keating.
I have expressed this concern before, and I will continue to express it. I continue to be unhappy with the situation whereby the position of the 151 officer, and I'm not personalising this here, this is not a personal issue, the position of the 151 officer continues to be raised by the auditors, and we continue to take no action on it. Now, if the auditors are raising their concern repeatedly, then I believe that we as members of the audit committee need to do more than just acknowledge that you've reported it yet again. You're effectively saying we're not complying with the rules. And there are rules that have been agreed nationally and are applied nationally normally. And I want to express and record my concern that we're ignoring that particular issue raised by the auditors repeatedly. Because I believe we should do something about it. Like, for example, require the executive here, the executive committee, the management committee, to comply with the rules and apply them. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lee.
Before anybody answers, could somebody just actually tell us whether there are other authorities where the section 151, what are you called, officer, is not actually an executive director?
Chairman, yes, there are other authorities where this disclosure is required because of that fact.
How many?
I don't know. I haven't done a poll, Chair.
Basically,
Can you provide some degree of answer which says there are one or two, and name them so that we've got some idea?
I'll endeavour to, through the various networks, and even through the auditors, to see if we can get a feel for what that number is. But there's quite a few, I would suggest. But I will endeavour to get that.
It's probably just worth noting, we're not specifically saying that this is a bad or a good thing. We're just required to report that that's the fact and that you have arrangements in place. So from a specific audit point of view, we don't have a view on whether it's a right or wrong thing. But what we do have to do is to say whether you've got the required arrangements in place. My personal experience of the councils I work with in other aspects, it is quite a common thing for the section 151 not to be a member of the leadership team, but it's still something that SIPs
It's
do.
quite
So
common.
it's something I've seen more than just here.
That could only be two, though.
Councillor Parker.
Thanks, Chair. As Councillor Keating's raised it, I share the sort of I'm wary also why we choose not to comply. And I know in the past that Kevin has offered explanation as to the reasoning behind this. If he hasn't, then maybe we should request as a committee the executive to come and tell us. If we're being asked here to sort of agree just because we're not complying to standards, then we should be reminded whether there are significant implications of not doing so, and whether things could be better if we did.
Again?
Chairman, I think just to remind the committee, I think on one occasion the chief executive came to the committee and explained the rationale to the committee following a similar request. No, just reminding the committee that the CX had been to this committee to explain the rationale, and I think probably last year there was also a note done by the Director of Governance and Commissioning, I think, that reiterated the rationale and how things had changed between that previous year and that year. And as you're aware, the Constitution has a formal protocol in it now, so there have been some changes in the approaches over the last couple of years. So the committee has had that information, and obviously officer structures are a responsibility of the head of paid service, the chief exec. Yeah.
Councillor Parker.
Could I then just suggest that in future years, for purposes of then limiting the debate that we're having this year occurring again, and for purpose of record, then somewhere on the agenda we can have that explanation, which would be helpful and constructive, I thought.
Councillor Keating.
just for clarity, that does not eliminate the request for information that we've been promised we will get. Thank you.
Anything else on that item? No? No. So moving on to the next item, fraud update report. Paul Gundry.
Thank you, Chair. This report is to inform members of the work that's been carried out by, or the fraud work that's been carried out so far this year. There are 3 points I'd just like to bring to your attention that are in the report. Paragraph 4.4.4, which is page 22 of 52. That's to inform you that the external auditors, PwC, will be attending the February committee to give a fraud presentation, and that'll be around the role of the audit committee in terms of fraud. So hopefully you'll be able to attend that one. Paragraph 4.7, which is on page 23. The council has submitted an application for £178,000 from the counter fraud fund, which will hopefully assist us in taking fraud forward. As yet, we haven't had, we don't know the outcome of that application, but as soon as I'm aware of it, because it's meant to be sometime this month, I will send an email to the committee members so you're aware. And Appendix 1 of my report, which is on page 24 of 52, is a for information document. This is something that was released in October by SIPFA as a code of practice for local authorities to follow. In my report I'll be bringing to you in April, I will do a position statement so we can see where Basingstoke fits against that code of practice, and if there's any corrective action we need to put in place, that will be also recorded in that report. So I'll pass over to members for questions.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions at all? Councillor Lee?
Paragraph 4.5.1, where we're told that we won't have the responsibility for fraud investigations and it's going to be run nationally, but we're keeping our 2 full-time staff. That sounds like an incremental cost to me. I'm not necessarily persuaded that what the government is doing is a proper way forward, but that's up to them. But why then do we need to retain 2 people if we're no longer undertaking this work ourselves?
Thank you, Chair. As far as the single fraud investigation service is concerned, that's only benefit fraud. So that's the housing benefit fraud. Indeed, but they only take responsibility for benefit fraud where the following areas of fraud: procurement, payroll expenses, council tax fraud, business rates fraud, grants fraud, and we also have a responsibility under the National Fraud Initiative, which is a national exercise for identifying fraud, still remains with the council. What I'm wanting to do with those 2 resources is become more proactive rather than reactive, because with the amount of referrals that we receive each year in terms of benefit fraud, that takes up the time of my 2 officers. So I'm hoping that this will free the resources to be able to be more proactive in identifying fraud and hopefully protect the public purse for the council.
Councillor Parker.
Sorry, can I just supplementary? Sorry. I mean, on this list, the benefit fraud is the largest item for recovering amounts. So I still have to question. I mean, I would like to be assured that you think the government can do it as well as you can do it. I know there's no. Well, the more remote it is, the less faith I would have in it somehow. I mean, and how often will they come? How often will they undertake the work? Do we know the answer to that? And I'm not necessarily persuaded by your answer about keeping 2 extra people, but there we are.
In terms of your first question, the DWP, the Single Fraud Investigation Service, will carry out any investigations they see fit towards benefit fraud, as my team would have done. Obviously, I can't. So again, it'll be down to how many referrals they get. They'll go through a risk assessment, I'm sure, to determine whether they need to take the investigation further. So obviously, I can't answer any more than that because that's their remit. And as I did prepare a business case for retaining my two FTEs to the Chief Financial Officer. If it's of use to members of this committee, I can email a copy of that report, that business case to you, so you can see justification for retaining those two members of staff.
Well, I'm sure you're aware, I would like the staff to be down to zero, so any paper that moved us in that direction would be, sorry? Well, outsource the whole thing, yeah. I would welcome to seeing that paper thing.
Would any other members of the committee like to see that paper at all? Just sort of generally. Mr. Parker was in, I think, a little bit first.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted just to, first of all, I could confirm with the officer, on page 20 and 21 on the tables, we've got the headings: overpaid, HP, CTB, CTRS. Is CTRS something else other than CTS, or because it doesn't appear in the glossary? If that's
It is the same. I did change the title, but forgot to change the glossary.
What I'd like to ask, and I'm not asking for the information now, but I wanted to float this onto the committee's consideration. I think in the main, the residents that pay their dues would want to see that this local authority has got a very proactive means of chasing after those who don't or those who overclaim. And we've got a lot of statistics here. The question that comes to my mind that I made a note against the tables was, at what cost staff and salaries, in the sense of what are we looking at in terms of we apply a lot of resources for the fighting and claiming monies back and establishing where there's been fraud. It would be useful, in my view, to get an understanding what real cost that is to the council, and I assume that's relatively easy to give us those figures.
We can get those for you. Yes. Would you like that in an email response, or yeah?
I have another, if I could, just quickly. Yes. On page 22, 432, you talk about of the 646 cases that have been reviewed to date. My question to you would just be, how many more cases are there that you are committed to reviewing?
There are a further 279, 279 cases left to review.
Councillor Keating.
I just wanted to say, in answer to the previous issue, I don't want to see the justification that went to the executives to approve the staffing, but I don't want to get involved in the level of staffing. Do we need an extra one there, an extra half one there? I want the people who manage the show to manage the show. So please don't copy me in even on that particular thing. But I did want to ask a question, if I may, Chair, on 4.7.1 on page 23. The counter fraud fund. When I look at the numbers here, it's easy to get a wrong impression because we're counting pennies. Took off all the pennies. The numbers would clearly be shown as 45,000 or 26,000 or whatever, and relative to the size of the benefit arrangement that we take in and pay out, we're talking about millions. So I suggest in the future we discount pennies. Just go to the nearest pound. because it would be much clearer that we're talking about a substantial number of small sums of money, not a small number of large sums of money. And on 4.7.1, the government, the DCLG, is saying we'll score £16 million at the problem, and you can all bid for a bite of that. Is it just because it's there that we're bidding for a bite of it? That's the question.
Thank you, Chair. The reason why we made the bid is because this money became available purely on the basis of the CIFIS work, and we felt that if the money's there, well. Sorry. Yeah, I think there's two factors. One, yes, the money's there to assist in developing the service, so we felt it was appropriate to make a bid for that, and also part of the bid was about partnership working with potentially other authorities and housing associations. So it was an opportunity to sort of do some further partnership work that if we could get resources for would assist all of those public sector organisations. So that was the thrust of the bid that we put forward.
Any other questions at all? Councillor Tilbury.
Oh yes, on 4.2, the recovery of overpayments, obviously this isn't a fraud paper, it sort of implies that they're sort of fraudulent, but are they just overpayments? Because they can be, obviously, as a clerical error, I think is a usual term, but often it's because it's not an intent, a fraudulent intent, or it's just an error that we've possibly made. If you could clarify that, that's the first one.
These overpayments have been identified by the work of my fraud investigators, so there's no internal clerical errors within those figures.
Yeah, I think that's sort of answered. The other thing is obviously we've been covered by the sort of fraud with it, but on the problem that usually, funny enough, not many people come to me and say they've had a problem, they've been overpaid by the council, but obviously there's often the people come and say we've been underpaid, and that's often identified, but obviously there's a balance to this, I think, because there's sort of, is it fraud or is it just error? Because, anyone, if you want a good laugh, try and fill in a housing benefit form, it's actually nightmarish. I think a lot of the problems is that people struggle with these things, and it's not, there's between fraud and intent to, as the ones above show, undeclare those sort of things, and people just getting it wrong. Can be quite nightmarish. So do we sort of look at that aspect of it as well? Because very often the two balance each other out, don't they?
Yes, as far as my team is concerned, we will only look at cases where we've received a referral, which is that, for example, they're living together, undeclared work, so on and so forth. And it's just they just haven't informed us that they've actually, and so the majority of these cases are around those types of scenarios.
The obvious point is obviously there's a number going to court which are clearly, sometimes it's just blatantly obvious, but and others it is just people forget that they need to change that in working tax credit. Anyone who's dealt with anything like that is pretty nightmarish, isn't it? Thank you.
Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just refer Paul to the appendix, the CIFA Code of Practice, and just confirm this is the code of practice that we're operating under now.
This code was only introduced in October last month, again purely because CIFA recognised that with the potential resources and skills being transferred to DWP, they are conscious that local authorities need to ensure they still take fraud seriously. So this is a brand new code. So that this, again, as I mentioned in my introduction, I will be doing a position statement against it, so I haven't had opportunity to do that because we've only had it for a couple of weeks.
Councillor Parker. Any other questions at all on this paper? No? Okay. Basically, the recommendation is recommended the committee note the contents of the report, and therefore it's noted. So item 8 on the agenda is the committee work programme. Did you?
Everything that's coming.
Okay. You haven't done the amendments this morning.
The amendments.
So the requirement is that we are to note and review the work programme, which I believe an updated copy has recently been sent out to all the committee members. Councillor Keating.
Just one short question, if I may, Chair. On the first box it says fraud update. On the third box it says fraud update protecting the public purse. What's the difference?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The protecting the public purse is the standard. It's not a code. It's more of a standard that we work towards. And I did a position statement last February to say this is how we work towards protecting the public purse. So again, it'll be an update to that, plus an update on where we are with the fraudulent figures, etc., etc.
I don't understand.
Okay, sorry.
In all honesty, because fraud update and box 1 should be about protecting the public purse as well.
I'll rename it next time then.
Thank you.
Otherwise, unless there are any comments, we accept and note and review the work programme as it's set out. So move on to paper 9, Treasury Management Mid-Year Report. Dean Pletz.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, councillors. This is the mid-year report on the Treasury Management function. It takes the form of a draft report to Cabinet, but I can confirm that the report that has gone on to Cabinet and will be going on to Council there's been no changes. So this is effectively the final sort of mid-year report. So you can take that as read. The report is shows that there's a shortfall or projected shortfall of income for the current year of £327,000 when compared to the original estimate. The main reason for the shortfall was primarily because of the timing of the new investments that we're making in the new external funds. The original estimate assumed that the investment would take place 4 months into the new year, and as it turns out we haven't yet. We're just about to do those investments, so it's about 4 months behind, and that leads to a shortfall of about £500,000, and that's been offset by some new long-term investment we did in gilts right at the end of last year after we'd set the original estimate, and obviously by not doing the long-term investment in the funds, we've had a little bit extra in the short funds, so there's an offsetting amount there where we've got some additional income there. The net effect is the £327,000 shortfall. The normal procedure with the shortfalls on the Treasury Management function is to make use of the interest risk reserve that we have specifically to deal with in-year variations. And I think in future we will be using that reserve more and possibly putting money in and taking money out, depending on the performance of the new funds, because as you're aware, we need to take a longer term view of the performance of those funds going forward. The report shows that we had average cash balances that were about £7 million more than we'd originally estimated, and that was primarily due to rephasing of the capital programme, and also we had made some assumptions about the likely spend of some of the resources that we had, in particular the new homes bonus monies that we had. So those things not happening meant that we temporarily got more cash resource than we'd anticipated. The report also shows that the overall expected return for the year is just under 2%, is 1.97 against an original estimate of 2.28. So if you've got any questions on the report, I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you very much.
Any questions at all? Councillor Leake.
Yeah, I'd like to, again, not having been on this committee for some time, just to ask why it has taken so long to invest our money in the diversified credit funds, or whatever it is that we are going to invest. I mean, why are we 4 months late? Yes. Sorry? Well, whatever it is, why are we so late? Oh, I beg your pardon.
I think just the amount of time that it's taken to be comfortable, to get comfortable with the reserves, or more comfortable with the reserve, the investment funds. Two, to get the relevant due diligence work that we got KPMG to do, and to take it through the relevant member processes and the member consultations took slightly longer than we thought. And three, to be fair, the market conditions. And so, for example, your members will be aware we looked at a PIMCO investment. Obviously, there are changes to that structure of that fund and to the leadership of those funds. So all of those factors together, along with other activity, meant it just taken us a little bit longer than we initially forecast in the budget. Remembering this is a variance against the budget, assuming that those funds would have performed in the way that we've estimated in the original budget.
And the due diligence to which you refer, is that something that's been made available to all members, or to members of this committee? I mean, again, I'm sorry, I haven't been a member. Which found what?
What I'm referring to is the specific due diligence on the structures of the funds and the fees and the access to the funds and the exits and entries and the legal structures of the funds, not the original. The committee had details of and reports around the selection of the funds, why they were being recommended, what the risks associated with those funds were, what KPMG were recommending. This particular piece of due diligence followed the decision, in effect, to say, yes, diversified credit funds are the chosen instrument for this proportion of the fund, of the council's investment. Now, can you look in detail at the funds the council was considering investing in, and do us a report on the key elements of those funds from more an administrative factor, so that we're aware of, are there anti-dilution clauses in them, what's the ability to get in and out of them, how do they trade, all of the technical details that we needed to understand, or we needed to get a report on, so we weren't just investing in the funds that they initially identified.
Did you find things that you found disturbing, or that were worrying? Or, I mean, I found it all rather extraordinary that one goes through all that rigmarole. But
we didn't find anything that was disturbing. Obviously, it gave us some pointers on how to access one of the funds that if they hadn't done that, we wouldn't have known, to avoid a particular issue. So it enabled us to phase entry into the funds in a structured way that they recommended. So, but there was nothing concerning that they found that we weren't aware of in terms of the risk profile of the funds or how they were managed or anything. It was more very technical, because these are, one's a big fund, one's a smaller fund, one's UKIT compliant, one is an institutional investment fund. So there were different structured funds. So it was really just making sure, from the as you would expect us to do, from the council's perspective, we've had them look at the detailed processes so that we're able to subscribe into them in a knowledgeable way.
when will the money be invested?
We're looking at investing this week. We've already instructed on one of them. There's one of them that they only deal every month, so we're looking to go in from the beginning of December.
Councillor Parker.
Well, I certainly would like to go on record as complimenting our officers on carrying out their due diligence, and I'm comforted to know that they've taken that trouble to do that. Know your product is a very essential thing. We can possibly do like others have done in the past and rely on these so-called professionals who are promoting and marketing a product, and to our find out that sometime we've got something that sucks. I think this is a good reason why we didn't end up with any Icelandic investments like other local authorities who were poorly advised. If I can go on to my questions then, please. So I have my full support in the work they carried out, and if it meant a delay in investment, then that's the price you pay. I'd like to ask, on those new funds, will we be carrying out some form of benchmarking into the future? Because it's not actually mentioned here, but I note that our advisors don't carry out that sort of benchmarking.
Yeah, we are paying KPMG for some ongoing support in terms of monitoring the funds, the two funds that we're using. So they will provide support to this committee. They'll come to this committee and answer any questions about performance, and they will do some benchmarking so that to put it into context in terms of the performance of the funds. So we will actually be getting that service from KPMG as part of the ongoing advice.
Just in simple terms, we'll get an idea, we'll get a feel for how our selected funds are performing in comparison to other funds that were available to us. Thank you. Can I then just looking at paragraph 16.4, page 45 of 52, could I clarify, please, when is the deadline, is my note. So I assume there's something that makes a reference to making good this money in 2014-15 and following a monitoring outturn report. What's the sort of target date for that, not just 2014-15? I think we need to have an idea when that's got to be achieved by.
Yeah, the monitoring report is the normal revenue monitoring report that goes throughout the year. Obviously, at the end of the financial year, there's a position statement in terms of where we are relative to the budget, and it's at that point that we are anticipating, or we know we have surpluses or underspends in the current year, and it will basically be an allocation of one of those underspends or part of that underspend into the interest risk reserve to top it up back up to its £1 million.
Is there a mechanism where that's then identified? Not, you don't wait for the report, but it's identified as being that's a priority call on that money, and it's to some extent ring-fenced for that purpose.
Yes, the monitoring report covers that. There is also the council's financial policies and procedures, and one of those is that the first call on any outturn surpluses is the replenishment of any risk reserves. So if we've used a risk reserve, whether it be the rent reserve or the interest risk reserve, they get a first call on any outturn surpluses to restore them back to their balances required.
Just then, if I can, keeping things friendly, just make one observation and a request. And I know I say these often when I'm looking at these reports, just as a help. It would have been helpful if on the page 35 of 52, which in effect is sort of the précis of the situation, we were told under the second spot the information we received not until page 45, which was what impact that had on that reserve. We note that it was going to be transferred, and if we'd had that information, you don't get that information until point 16.3 on page 45, the detail. Yes, but I didn't want to wait for another 10 pages to find that out. Yes, it could just be a C paragraph. Yes, John, thank you. But earlier on would be better than... Yes.
Yeah, I absolutely take your point, and we'll amend the future reports. Yeah, that's okay. And it is difficult because obviously I'm trying to give an executive summary there, and I can't just include everything that's in the report, but you're right. No.
Any other questions at all? Comments, yeah.
My first comment is on your glossary. It might be time to include diversified credit funds, and so that everybody knows what they are. And the second thing, on page 48, where we show the gilts at the top of the page, and we show the cost, we don't actually show the nominal amount anywhere, do we? Or is written down value nominal amount? Page 48 is where I looked at it, and all you've got there is the cost. Then you go to page 50, where you've got written down value and purchase value, but it doesn't anywhere say what the nominal value is unless written down means nominal.
You're absolutely right. The written down value is effectively the nominal amount adjusted for the accruals that we have to make one way or the other, depending, or the write downs we have to make one way or the other, depending on the purchase price. So we will be amortising some of the interest one way or the other. But that's the sort of position as at the 30th of September. That is the sort of amount that we've written down, and that's there really just to give you an idea of whether or not there's a notional gain or loss on those individual gilts at that point in time.
I'm not sure that I've necessarily understood your answer. Is it the nominal value or is it not? And if it isn't the nominal value, would it be possible to put the nominal value on page 48, for instance?
Yeah, absolutely. We can put the nominal value in there if you would like us to, and that's as for more information purposes. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other questions at all? No? If not, then basically the committee notes the contents of the report. Yep. Councillor Parker.
So you're about to fold your papers up and close the Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Before you did, if I could just, it all happened rather quick at the beginning, and I just wanted to identify, I assume it's going to be noted on the minutes, Councillor Leake is newly reappointed to the committee, and I welcome that.
He's kinder than I am.
Okay. Thank you. If that's it for the committee meeting, that concludes the meeting, and the webcast will be turned off.